Imagine a family blessed with everything: power, wealth, and influence, yet plagued by silence, rivalry, and betrayal. The story of David's only daughter, Tamar, in the book of 2 Samuel, unfolds as a chilling reminder that even those closest to us can harbor darkness. What happens when a father, known for his bravery and wisdom, chooses silence over action in the face of a horrific injustice? When love turns into obsession and a thirst for revenge leads to tragedy, we're left questioning the true cost of silence within a family. But here's the twist. While this ancient story feels worlds apart from our lives today, it's shockingly relevant. David's family drama reveals the timeless struggles that many families still face: the tension between justice and loyalty, the devastating impact of unresolved anger, and the powerful lessons of forgiveness. By uncovering this gripping narrative, you'll gain insights that few discuss but hold the key to transforming family dynamics today. Prepare to be captivated, disturbed, and ultimately left speechless. In the quiet shadows of David's palace, a silence grew that would bring devastation to his family. David, often hailed as a man after God's own heart, faced a test not of battle, but of character within his own household. This isn't just about a king failing to protect his kingdom. It's about a father, too wrapped in silence, missing the chance to shield his daughter Tamar. Imagine the difference if David had acted. In our own lives, when we stay silent in the face of wrong, we risk creating cracks in the foundation of our families, just as David did. But David's silence wasn't born out of ignorance. He knew what was happening in his household. He felt the anguish when Tamar was wronged, yet he held his tongue, a choice that echoes through time as a tragic lesson. This isn't just ancient history. It's a mirror to our lives today. How many times do we choose silence over speaking up for what's right, simply because we fear rocking the boat? Silence, in the face of harm, can be as damaging as the act itself. David's story is a testament to the high cost of inaction. If he, a king, a father, had been bold enough to confront the situation, perhaps the history of his family would have been different. In our daily lives, this choice to confront issues or remain silent shapes our relationships and even our communities. David's choice offers us a hard question. Are we prepared to face difficult conversations, or will we let silence be the story that defines us? Think about families today, where silence reigns over uncomfortable truths. In such cases, pain and resentment build up, just as it did in David's palace. The fractures become obvious, but without action, they deepen. Silence, often seen as a form of protection, can become a form of betrayal. For example, when a parent ignores signs of bullying because they don't want to confront the issue, that silence can end up causing more harm than the bullying itself. David's silence after Tamar's assault reminds us that doing nothing is, in itself, a choice, one with consequences. For those who find themselves in positions of power, whether as leaders or parents, there's a responsibility to act when someone is hurt. It's not about being a hero, it's about being human. If David had chosen to speak out, he could have shown his children that justice, not pride, was what mattered most. There's an unspoken agreement in families: protection and support in times of trouble. When that trust is broken, as it was in David's family, the impact can be devastating. For Tamar, the silence around her pain only magnified her trauma. And for Absalom, David's other son, that silence planted a seed of anger. If we see someone in need of our voice, how much more should we risk speaking up, knowing what silence can cause? This isn't just David's story. It's a reality that affects countless families today. Parents, friends, mentors, they all have the power to break cycles of silence and stand against wrongdoing. Imagine if David had spoken up for Tamar. Perhaps the story wouldn't end in bloodshed. But David's choice has become a warning, a reminder that there is a price for remaining silent when we're called to protect others. In many ways, we're not so different from David. In workplaces, communities, and even our homes, there are times we know we should act, but fear and hesitation hold us back. Perhaps David thought his silence would keep the peace, but peace built on silence is fragile and easily shattered, as his story shows. When we let fear keep us from action, we leave space for further harm. David's silence set the stage for what came next, a cycle of revenge that tore his family apart. His story leaves us with a choice. We can learn from his example and find the courage to speak up, or we can remain silent and risk the same kind of brokenness. It's a choice each of us will face. And the story of David's family shows us just how high the stakes can be. Inside David's palace, life was far from simple. His children grew up in an environment charged with power, rivalry, and ambition, a recipe for discord. Imagine a family where everyone wants to be the strongest, the smartest, the one to carry on the legacy. But in David's house, this struggle for power was intensified by the fact that his children had different mothers, each vying for their own child's success. This isn't just royal history. It's a tale of sibling rivalry taken to dangerous extremes. David's family reflects how power can corrupt even the closest of relationships. For example, think of families where each sibling feels they have to outperform the others, whether in academics, career, or personal success. In David's house, the stakes were life and death. In our world, this pressure might show up as constant competition, where love and support take a backseat to jealousy and resentment. When ambition becomes more important than connection, it can lead to isolation. The rivalries among David's children weren't just fueled by ambition, they were encouraged by the circumstances of the palace. David's multiple marriages meant his children grew up with divided loyalties and alliances. Picture a family where children constantly compare their achievements, feeling like they're fighting for their parents' love. David's children knew that the power in their father's kingdom wouldn't go to everyone, making every moment an opportunity or a threat. Amid these tensions, each child was influenced by their mother's position and their desire to secure a legacy. Just as in David's time, many of us may experience subtle favoritism or competition in our own families. Perhaps one child is known for their intellect, another for their charm, while yet another is seen as the responsible one. These labels, while seemingly innocent, can deepen divides. In David's palace, these labels became weapons in the game of survival. Such an environment teaches children that family isn't necessarily a place of refuge but a battleground. Picture how this impacted each of David's children, not just in their quest for power, but in their basic sense of self-worth. When a family is riddled with comparison, it can leave scars that last a lifetime. David's family is a reminder that parents have a powerful role in fostering unity and discouraging rivalry, which might otherwise grow unchecked. David's house was filled with whispers of favoritism, jealousy, and unspoken resentment. In a world where leaders often struggle to keep peace in their own homes, David was no exception. His children, seeing the world through a lens of competition, would stop at nothing to get ahead. It's a stark reminder for any parent or leader. The values you nurture in your children will shape their futures, whether those values are kindness or ambition. Imagine how different things might have been if David had shown his children the strength of unity, instead of allowing rivalry to flourish. A family that works together, supports each other, and doesn't let ambition overshadow love, is a family that can weather storms. In today's world, creating this environment is just as important. Recognizing each child's unique qualities without making them feel like rivals can prevent jealousy from taking root. It's easy to judge David's household and think, that would never happen in my family. But the truth is, many families face similar challenges in less obvious ways. Perhaps it's a silent competition for parental approval, or maybe it's the constant need to prove oneself. David's story shows that rivalry can be subtle yet dangerous, a hidden toxin that erodes the foundation of family if left unchecked. In the palace, rivalry wasn't just about success. It was a matter of survival. For David's children, every interaction was steeped in the politics of the kingdom. They learned to see each other as obstacles rather than allies. The lesson here is clear. When rivalry goes unaddressed, it transforms relationships into power struggles. And as David would soon discover, the cost of rivalry unchecked would come with a steep price. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think about David's silence? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective really adds to the discussion. Tamar's story is one of the most heart-wrenching in the entire Bible. She was young, innocent, and trusting, but her life took a dark turn due to the unchecked desires within David's family. Her brother Amnon, consumed by an unhealthy obsession, saw Tamar as an object rather than a sister. In many ways, Tamar's story represents the vulnerability many feel when trust is betrayed. Sadly, her trust was shattered, and what followed was a tragedy that highlights the very worst of human actions when driven by selfish desires. In David's palace, Tamar was surrounded by family, yet she was unprotected. She had every reason to believe her family would safeguard her dignity and well-being. But the twisted intentions of Amnon and the scheming of Jonadab led her into a trap. This is a stark reminder that those closest to us have the power to either protect or harm us. Tamar's story is an age-old tale, yet painfully relevant in today's world, where betrayal by those we trust can leave lasting scars. Amnon's obsession didn't emerge in isolation. His friend Jonadab, a master of manipulation, encouraged him down a dark path, creating a scheme to bring Tamar into Amnon's grasp. Sometimes, the people around us who seem like friends are actually fueling our worst instincts. Jonadab's role shows the importance of choosing friends wisely, people who encourage growth, respect, and kindness. Tamar's tragedy reminds us that true friends never push us to harm others. Innocently, Tamar obeyed the call to Amnon's quarters, unaware of his intentions. This painful moment emphasizes just how vulnerable good-hearted people can be when others take advantage of their kindness. Tamar's tragedy resonates with anyone who's ever been misled by someone they trusted. In life, knowing when to recognize red flags, even among those we trust, can serve as a form of protection. Tamar didn't have this choice, but her story encourages us to be cautious when something feels wrong. The events that unfolded are a grim illustration of what happens when desire is unchecked by morality. Amnon, in his selfishness, did not consider Tamar's humanity, her dignity, or the long-lasting impact of his actions. This story isn't just about a man and a woman. It's a portrayal of how self-centered desires can harm others. Amnon's obsession turned into an act that not only hurt Tamar, but set off a chain of tragedies within the family, showing that harmful actions rarely end with just one victim. After the assault, Tamar's grief was compounded by the silence and inaction of those around her. The tragedy deepened as her own family failed to comfort, support, or even acknowledge her pain. Imagine enduring such a trauma and having no one to turn to. Tamar was left alone in her suffering, a reminder of how crucial it is for families to offer support and validation to those in pain. In our own lives, extending support to those who suffer can make all the difference in their healing journey. Tamar's story also exposes the impact of cultural and societal pressures that leave victims feeling isolated and ashamed. In a world that sometimes still questions the validity of a victim's pain, Tamar's tragedy remains painfully relevant. Too often, society's silence amplifies the suffering of those who have already been wronged. Her experience shows that when we don't listen to or believe the voices of those who suffer, we allow injustice to take root. For Tamar, her trauma was not the end, but the beginning of a new hardship. The stigma and isolation that followed. Her life changed forever, not only because of what was done to her, but because no one was willing to stand up and address it. Imagine how differently her story might have unfolded if she had been met with compassion and support. Tamar's story serves as a powerful call to break the silence that surrounds suffering and to reach out in empathy when we see someone in pain. The consequences of Tamar's tragedy went beyond her personal suffering. It was the spark that would ignite further violence and revenge within David's family. Her story set in motion a series of events that would ultimately tear the family apart. For David's children, this wasn't just about power or rivalry anymore. It was about avenging a sister's honor. Tamar's story serves as a reminder that unresolved pain, when left to fester, often grows into something even more destructive. When David learned about Tamar's tragedy, he was furious. But despite his anger, he chose to stay silent. His decision to avoid confrontation speaks volumes, especially coming from a king known for his courage on the battlefield. This silence, however, cost him dearly in his own home. It's one thing to be a hero in public, but to stand up for justice within one's own family can be the true test of character. David's silence reminds us that ignoring injustice, even within our closest circles, can cause unseen wounds to fester. David's lack of action was a powerful message in itself. His silence told his family, especially Tamar, that her suffering wasn't worth addressing. This is a harsh reality faced by many victims today, who feel dismissed or ignored by those closest to them. When a leader, a parent, or a friend doesn't act, it can feel like a betrayal. David's story serves as a reminder that failing to confront wrongdoing can be as damaging as the wrongdoing itself. Silence, in this sense, is its own kind of harm. For Tamar, David's silence was more than just inaction. It was a confirmation that her pain didn't matter enough. This lack of support can be devastating for anyone who has experienced trauma. Imagine enduring something terrible, only to see those who should protect you do nothing. David's silence placed the burden of Tamar's suffering solely on her shoulders. In our own lives, offering support, even just by acknowledging someone's pain, can provide immense relief and healing for those who feel alone. David's inaction also had another, more dangerous effect. It fueled Absalom's rage. Absalom, Tamar's brother, saw his father's silence as a sign that justice would not be served. In his mind, if David wouldn't protect Tamar, then he would have to take matters into his own hands. This reaction isn't uncommon in families or communities where authority figures don't act against wrongdoing. Absalom's path to revenge started the moment he realized that silence would be the only response to his sister's suffering. When justice isn't served, bitterness has a way of growing. Absalom's anger didn't just disappear, it simmered, waiting for the right moment to erupt. David's silence became the soil in which Absalom's resentment took root, eventually growing into a plan for revenge. Many families have seen this pattern. One member's silence or inaction allows resentment to grow in another, leading to conflicts that could have been avoided. David's story shows us the hidden dangers of avoiding difficult conversations. David's silence also points to a deeper issue, the difficulty of addressing wrongdoing within one's own family. It's easy to point out flaws in others, but when it's our own loved ones, the lines can get blurred. David, the mighty king, found himself paralyzed when faced with his own family's tragedy. This is a common struggle, where emotions and loyalties complicate the right course of action. David's silence, though perhaps well-intentioned, shows the cost of choosing comfort over courage. Absalom's anger over David's silence eventually turned into a fierce desire for revenge. For 2 years, he harbored resentment, planning the perfect moment to act. It's a sobering reminder of how unresolved pain and anger can shape our choices. Instead of finding peace, Absalom let his rage define him, and it all began with a father who wouldn't act. In our lives, breaking silence and addressing pain directly can prevent unresolved emotions from turning into lifelong bitterness. Some might argue that David chose silence because he feared what his family would think, or perhaps he didn't want to disrupt the fragile peace in his household. But as we see, silence didn't bring peace. It only postponed the inevitable. David's story reveals a hard truth. Avoiding conflict may feel easier in the moment, but it often leads to larger problems down the line. It's a lesson in the importance of addressing issues head-on rather than letting them linger. David's silence became a turning point in his family's story, setting the stage for further tragedy. Without intervention, the pain and resentment within his family were left to grow unchecked. This tale is a reminder that silence can sometimes be a louder response than words. David's choice not to act ultimately left an opening for others to act in ways that would bring even more suffering. The price of his silence would echo through the lives of everyone he held dear. After 2 long years of silence, Absalom's anger had reached its breaking point. He had watched his father, David, do nothing about Tamar's suffering, and his resentment festered until it turned into a fierce determination for revenge. In his mind, justice would only be served if he took matters into his own hands. Absalom's story is one of pain left unaddressed, a reminder of how unresolved hurt can transform even the best intentions into acts of vengeance. Absalom decided that if David wouldn't act, he would. He carefully planned a banquet and invited his brother Amnon, setting the stage for the ultimate payback. This wasn't a hasty decision. It was a calculated act of revenge fueled by years of bitter silence. Absalom's response shows how, when justice isn't served, some people will go to extremes to create their own sense of closure. His actions reveal the power of resentment to drive people into dark places. At the banquet, Absalom gave the order, and Amnon was killed. In that moment, Absalom became both avenger and criminal, crossing a line that would haunt him and his family for years to come. This act of revenge, while it might have felt like justice to Absalom, unleashed even more tragedy. Many families today witness similar patterns, where unresolved conflicts explode into moments of anger, forever altering relationships. Absalom's revenge may feel extreme, but it reflects a real danger in letting hurt go unaddressed. Absalom's story is a stark reminder that vengeance doesn't heal, it only deepens the wound. After Amnon's death, the tension in David's family only escalated. Instead of restoring peace or bringing closure, Absalom's actions widened the gap between him and his father. In our lives, too, the pursuit of revenge often leads to isolation rather than justice. By choosing vengeance over healing, Absalom not only punished Amnon but also sentenced himself to a life of conflict. Even though he avenged Tamar, Absalom found no satisfaction or peace after Amnon's death. His act of revenge didn't erase the pain his family had suffered. It only brought new sorrows. Sometimes, we might think that getting even will bring relief, but more often than not, it leaves us feeling emptier than before. Absalom's story teaches that revenge rarely satisfies the desire for justice. Instead, it often creates a cycle of pain that affects everyone involved. David, heartbroken over the death of his son, found himself facing the consequences of his own silence once again. The king, who had defeated giants and enemies, couldn't stop the turmoil within his own family. Absalom's actions forced David to confront the painful truth that ignoring problems doesn't make them disappear. The tragedy of Absalom and Amnon is a reminder that avoiding conflict can lead to outcomes far worse than facing issues head-on. Absalom's act of revenge also led to his own exile. Forced to flee, he became a man on the run, distanced from the very family he thought he was defending. This is often the bitter irony of vengeance. It leaves us isolated from those we love, disconnected from the very people we seek to protect. Absalom's choice reminds us that revenge can cost us more than we ever anticipated, leading to outcomes far beyond our control. In seeking justice for Tamar, Absalom only added to his family's suffering. His revenge may have felt like a victory at first, but it ultimately led him down a path of loss and regret. This story echoes in the lives of people who find themselves driven by anger, believing that revenge will solve their problems. Absalom's life shows that when revenge becomes the answer, it rarely leads to the peace we hope for. Instead, it brings more heartache. The story of Absalom's revenge leaves us with a haunting question. Could things have been different if David had spoken up? In taking revenge, Absalom tried to mend the wounds his father ignored, but his actions only opened new ones. This tragic cycle of hurt reminds us of the importance of breaking patterns of silence and bitterness. Absalom's journey is a powerful lesson in how choosing healing over revenge can be the hardest, yet most rewarding, path forward. The story of David, Tamar, Amnon, and Absalom offers timeless lessons that resonate deeply with modern families. It's a tale that shows how silence, unchecked ambition, and unresolved pain can fracture even the closest bonds. For families today, these ancient stories underscore the importance of vigilance, open communication, and accountability. David's family paid a high price for silence, but we don't have to repeat those mistakes. By fostering an environment of trust and openness, families can create a refuge against life's storms. One of the greatest lessons from this story is the importance of addressing wrongdoing directly. David's choice to stay silent in the face of Tamar's tragedy serves as a warning about the dangers of ignoring issues, especially within the family. In modern life, this could mean taking action when we see signs of bullying, abuse, or even subtle manipulations that harm family members. Having these tough conversations is challenging, but it prevents issues from festering and causing lasting harm. Open communication is key. David's family struggled because secrets and silence were allowed to take root, creating resentment and misunderstandings. Today, many families face similar challenges, where children or parents feel they can't share their true feelings. Encouraging honest conversations can be as simple as having regular family check-ins or creating a safe space for everyone to express their concerns. When each member feels heard, the bonds grow stronger and conflicts become easier to resolve. This story also teaches us about the value of accountability. When family members know there will be consequences for their actions, they are more likely to make thoughtful decisions. David's failure to hold Amnon accountable had disastrous effects, leading Absalom to seek justice himself. For modern families, accountability can be established by setting clear expectations and ensuring that boundaries are respected. It's about creating a sense of responsibility that protects and strengthens family ties. David's story reminds us of the importance of vigilance, especially for parents. His inaction shows how overlooking harmful behaviors can lead to larger issues. In today's world, this might mean paying close attention to our children's social interactions, monitoring signs of distress, and being present when they need support. Small gestures like asking about their day or encouraging open conversations can make a world of difference in helping them feel valued and protected. Respecting each family member's individuality is another key takeaway. David's children, with their distinct personalities and rivalries, could have benefited from a household that valued each person's unique strengths. Modern families can apply this by celebrating differences rather than comparing siblings or expecting everyone to follow the same path. Embracing each person's individuality fosters a culture of acceptance and unity that can withstand life's challenges. One powerful lesson from this tale is the need to resolve conflicts rather than let them simmer. Absalom's story is a stark reminder that unresolved anger can grow into something destructive. In today's context, families can encourage healthy conflict resolution by teaching children to express their feelings constructively. Practicing empathy and understanding each other's perspectives can help prevent resentment from building up, paving the way for reconciliation and growth. David's family tragedy also serves as a reminder to break cycles of revenge and bitterness. Absalom's pursuit of vengeance only deepened the wounds within his family, illustrating that revenge never truly heals. Families can learn from this by fostering forgiveness, teaching that letting go of anger is a sign of strength, not weakness. Encouraging apologies and reconciliation helps family members move forward rather than remaining stuck in past hurts. Ultimately, the story of David's family reveals the power of love and forgiveness as the glue that can hold families together. Even in the face of adversity, modern families have the chance to create a legacy of compassion and support, learning from David's mistakes to build stronger, more resilient connections. By choosing open communication, accountability, and empathy, families can overcome challenges and nurture an environment where everyone feels safe and valued. The story of David, Tamar, Amnon, and Absalom isn't just an ancient tale, it's a powerful lesson in the impact of silence, unchecked emotions, and the strength of forgiveness within families. After hearing their story, ask yourself, what silence in your life needs to be broken? Are there unresolved conflicts that could benefit from a courageous conversation? Applying these lessons could transform your family, creating bonds of openness, accountability, and empathy that can weather any storm. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications. Join us as we explore more powerful stories that reveal timeless truths, helping us build stronger, more resilient lives. Let's grow together, one story at a time.